I remember that I had the opportunity to interview some of the Forbes 500 VPs. And I think it was like around 3 to 4 months. I got a chance to interview at least 50 or 60 of them. And I kind of drew a similar conclusion because those people, from the perspective of the young me, and I reckon that they were super successful. And they earn lots of money every year and they have very high social status. I became very close friends with them as well. And I think 99% of them, they hate their job, they hate their life. And I actually asked them why. And they would use this sentence, which is really interesting. They were like, when I'm successful, I want to do this, that, and that. And I was like, what do you mean by when you are successful? You are already successful. But why do you wait? But then they're already at their 40s, 50s, or 60s. I was like, if by that you don't think you are successful enough, and even by those kind of scenario, you still don't feel like you can do something you like or something you dreamed when you are young, it means that if I wait until my 40th, maybe I'm not satisfied.
Today's guest is Jacob Tan from China, a visionary in sustainable development and social innovation, also a dear friend of mine. As the founder and CEO of MSC Consulting and one of the pioneers of sustainability consulting in China, Jacob has been instrumental in guiding Fortune 500 companies and Chinese local enterprises towards impactful and socially responsible transformations. Twice named to Forbes 30 Under 30, Jacob has also backpacked across 20 countries and nearly died twice. Curious about how all this shaped him? Let's dive in. Hi, Jacob. Welcome to the show.
Hi, Crystal. Thank you for having me here.
Yeah, so just a little bit of backstory between me and Jacob. We have known each other for over 30 years.
Wow,
So he's
really?
actually
We're that old already. Come on.
we are.
We
Also because we knew each other since we were in kindergarten. So
Right, yeah.
So you're one of my oldest friends I have, and we also went to, as I mentioned, the same kindergarten, primary school, junior high school, and we spent over 10 years in the same classroom. So it's just like very surreal for me to interview you, and it's also the first time we speak English with each other.
Right,
So
it feels so weird.
it is very weird. It's definitely very weird. But anyway, we'll make it work.
Mhm.
Anyway, so tell us about yourself.
Where do I start? And we were both from this small town called Shangyu, Zhejiang province.
It's not that small. It's like 1 million
Oh, right.
people there.
Well, compared to Singapore, it's not that small.
It's not, well, exactly. Yeah, but it's also now it's a part of Shaoxing, right? And for those who don't know what Shaoxing is, we have amazing yellow wine, which is now a staple for a lot of restaurants when they're offering Chinese food. But anyway, so I'll let you continue.
All right, so where was I? We're both from Shangyu. What else about me? I'm a full-time business consultant. I'm now doing sustainability and ESG consulting. I'm not sure whether the audience have ever heard about this term, but basically what I do, I used to work for a big consulting firm. Then I got tired of making slides every day and thought if I could make slides for those like Forbes 500 to make more money, how come no one's using the same methodology to analyze the problem of poverty, of education, of climate change? So I think it was the year of 2015. I quit my management consulting job, came back to China, started my own firm. It's called MSC, which stands for Maker Sustainability Consulting. So now it's a boutique consulting firm of 30 people. I've been doing this for 9 years already. It's almost 10 years. I would say that I am an entrepreneur. I love what I do a lot. I love doing sustainability consulting. Okay, I think you're being really humble. So Jake is also a 2-time Forbes 30 Under 30, and he's just one of those kids where like your parents compare you to. Every time I go back home, I mean, there are always there's something that parents would like to compare to. So
That's
for
true.
example, like you got married before I do, and you are basically the perfect example.
You can get married anytime. That is
I
not
know,
hard.
right?
Having
I know,
a
right?
great career and working on something you're passionate about, I mean, like that is much harder, that shows characters, right? Like anybody can get
Oh,
married.
thank you. Wow.
So, but anyway, so what I'm trying to say is that he has done amazing things. So let's dig deeper into what he has done. One thing that I really thought that was very extraordinary about you was that you started a sustainability consulting firm in China in the early 2010s, at the time when it was not even a real thing yet. So what gave you the courage to move in that direction so early? And how did people around you, whether in, corporates, family, and social circles, react when you first share that vision? And to give up a stable job at the time, I think you were in Tokyo, in Japan, right? To move back to China, and start your own company in a field that a lot of people hadn't even heard about at the time. Give you, I guess, yeah, what was behind that decision?
Well, that's a very good question. I'm not sure whether I've shared this story with you, but for me, it was never a decision of having my own startup something. It was basically something that I wanted to do for my life. That was basically it. So I was at my first job at a big firm. Then I remember it was probably at the end of 2013 where I had my first business trip from Tokyo to Kenya. So I had to stay in Kenya for 3 months. There was a Japanese company who was trying to expand their market in Africa. I remember we had the biggest office in the highest building in Kenya, and on the first floor there was like probably the first and the only Starbucks there. So I didn't like to go to the office every day. I was sitting at the Starbucks. So it was on the eighth day when I started to realize through the windows I could see there's actually a slum, a very big slum behind the windows. So I think it was that day I decided to drop my computers at Starbucks. I took a walk to the slum. It probably took me 8 hours to walk around. I tried to talk to everyone I met. Then there was a very quick calculation that I did. I calculate the salary, like the daily salary I got from the firm, like because like usually we got monthly salary, right? So
Yeah.
I try to divide the number by 21 working days, and I was trying to calculate the number plus the allowance, like the travel allowance I got from the firm. So I put these two numbers together. It was not a lot, but then I realized that that number is actually higher than the total needs of the food of the slum. So the number kind of struck me a lot, and I think that was the moment when I started to realize if I am making slides every day. Well, you were in management consulting job yourself as well. We both made lots of slides, and I was like, what the heck am I doing every day? That is probably at the very beginning of this interview. I said that if I can make slides for Forbes 500 companies, how come no one's using the same methodology to analyze, say, the poverty issue of the slum? So the idea struck to me when I started to think maybe it is something that I want to do for my lifetime. I mean, I do love consulting. I'm really good at consulting. I gotta say that. But that's something I want to do. I just don't want to write slides for the companies. I want to write slides for social impact. And I think 2 years later, I quit my job. I was never ready for a startup. I came back to China and I started to think if there was someone who was doing something similar, I could probably join him or her. But then I basically took a visit to everyone who claimed that they were doing something similar in China. The result was kind of, I wouldn't say disappointing, but it was very different from what I had expected, mainly because for all the people or all the firms who claimed that they were doing ESG, CSR, sustainability consulting, 99%, or I could just say like 100% of them were just writing reports or like making PR events for those big companies. No one was actually combining the idea of sustainability and business growth and business strategy together. So for me, it was never an urge of to have my own company as a startup. It left me with no choices but to choose this road because no one else was doing it.
So did you see it in other places where other people were doing it, and that's why because if I were to be in that shoes, I might be thinking, oh, maybe it's just not a thing, maybe just like it's not viable, and that's why people aren't doing it. Did you see it in other places, and that's why it inspired you to do it in China?
Yeah, sure. I mean, there were similar firms in Japan, in the UK, in the US, of course. And it was like, no one's doing similar things in China. So I think that's something that got me thinking.
Yeah, yeah. Interesting. So you've lived in so many different places, right? So, I don't think you mentioned in the introduction, but I know that you spent 18 years in China and then you went to Japan for your college. You also worked there.
Hmm.
You also went to UK and
Oh yeah,
you,
it was exchange program. It was just like
right,
1 year, my third year of university.
right, right. And you like worked there a little bit as well. And I believe that's
Yeah, right.
where that's where it gave you exposure to sustainability, how that was
Yeah.
done in developed countries as well. And then you came to China. You now always travel to different places in China and also abroad. So
Mhm.
living in so many different places, what has moving between cultures taught you about who you are at the core?
Wow, that is such a big question. Honestly, I always see myself as a certain kind of people who could actually adjust quickly to one culture. I can proudly say that I can live with any kind of culture. You probably don't know this. I actually majored in anthropology.
That is so niche. I mean, I
Right.
love anthropology, but it's not an Asian, major. It's not
It's
an
not.
Asian
It's
parent
not.
approved major.
You know what? It's very funny. My parents could never say the term. I mean, of course, they don't really speak English, so they don't know the term anthropology. So we have this Chinese term called 人类学, but in Chinese, right? So my
Yeah,
parents didn't know that. Every time the relatives asked them like what I was doing in Japan, I
yeah.
remember my dad said something like, "Yeah, he's probably learning about like comics in Japan."
Comics.
Right. That's actually what he thought.
That's hilarious. Why did you study that? And how did you learn that? I guess what did the knowledge help you in your later field and your interests and your work?
I think there's like one theory in anthropology that kind of influenced me the most is that it's really hard for anyone in the world to define who they are, who he is, who she is. But again, it's easier for someone to define who he's not. So
For
I
sure.
think throughout all the cultures that I've experienced, for example, a lot of people ask me whether like why didn't I stay in Japan? I think like the career culture, the culture at the workplace is definitely something that I don't want in my life. I kind of hate the hierarchical system. I don't want to listen to someone only because he's elder than me or because he's my senior.
Right.
That's one of the reasons I don't really feel like staying in Japan either for work or for life. But for leisure, it's really awesome. So I mean, there are lots of like those kind of small things that made me thinking what kind of life I want. I'm not sure whether you heard of this, but it's probably a very popular term. It's a Japanese term called ikigai.
Yes.
So
Very
basically,
popular.
yeah, it's very popular, I guess. Basically, it's for those who don't know, it's basically the combination of what you like, what you get paid for, what the society needs, and what you're good at, and etc. So it's basically the combination of everything all together. And the inner part is called ikigai. So for me, I think throughout all the cultures, what I start to realize something that I don't want, for example, the hierarchical system. I want to be recognized as who I really am and who what I am actually capable of. That is for one. And I said this earlier, I found myself really good at consulting. Uh, I'm introvert, but again, I'm really good at logic and putting things together. I can't really do creative stuff. I don't really have those creative minds. And whatever I do love pursue the idea of social impact and sustainability. So I would say that what I am doing now is basically the ikigai for myself. I'm not sure I can have this for my lifetime. For the moment being, it is.
Did you figure it out in Japan, or was there something in, I guess, moving around all these different cultures taught you about yourself?
Well, definitely the latter. It's definitely not a one moment thing that one moment in Japan that I realized it is something that I wanted to do. I
Yeah.
think it's basically the different smaller conclusions I drew from different occasions and different scenarios. Well, I remember there was like one time in where was it? Yeah, in the UK. I also had the chance to stay there and have a very nice job there. And then I started to ask myself, we have this saying in China nowadays that if you were born in those what we call developed countries, it's like a easier mode of life. But if
You're what?
easier mode of life.
Easier mode of life. Okay.
Like if you were born in those developed countries, it's probably easy. Right. And if you are born, like say in the tribes in Africa, it's probably a little bit life is a bit harder.
Yeah.
So when I was in those developed countries, either in the UK or in Japan, I thought, yes, I could, like if there is a parallel universe, I could have or should have a better life, a better work. But I think at least in this life I chose not to, because I found something that I want to do for my life. If I can probably earn more in those countries, I can probably have way much better, say, work-life balance in those countries. But I still decide to come back to China.
Right, right. So basically, you're saying that at that age, after seeing different cultures and also their lifestyle,
Yeah,
and the work they did, you decided that you want to pursue what you are good at and passionate about. And also to kind of chose a place where you can make those impacts, right? Which is,
right.
you know, at the time in China, because you could have also done these things in perhaps a developed country, but maybe the impact will be smaller just because it's more mature and there's already people
Right.
doing it. And also the society is more mature, you know, in general. So, but you are aware that you are actually making a trade-off in between the lifestyle that you could have had and also you know the I guess a career trajectory you're going to set yourself up for. Have you ever regretted that decision? How did that pan out for
No,
you?
not really. Not really.
Yeah, okay. And so you know, I wonder because a lot of people perhaps they have something they want to pursue, you know, maybe they want to, you know, maybe they're a lawyer, they want to be a therapist, or maybe they're a doctor and they're dreaming about you know, being a volunteer in, you know, in Africa, something like that. But there's a lot of considerations in their mind that kind of set them back, right? Where they're like, oh, like, I don't know if the money will be good. I don't know how other people is going to perceive me. I don't know whether it's going to be as prestigious. I'm in New York City and you see all these people hustling here. I ask people, it's like, you know, why do people live here where they need to pay 13 USD for a basic umbrella? It's insane to me. And people are like, oh, maybe like I just wanted to tell people I live in New York City because it's a bragging right. So it's like, to me, that doesn't make any sense. But it's like there's a lot of emotional value people place in all these, the status and money and whatever that people are pursuing the rat race. And I just felt like you consciously made that decision to be like, all these things aren't as important as what I, you know, believe that I should do.
Yeah.
Did you have any internal, I guess, internal pushback or external pushback at the time? And have you ever had any doubts about it?
Well, yeah, sure. Well, I 100% agree with what you just said. I think like no place is perfect. I'm
Yeah.
not saying that one place is better than the other. I can never say that. I don't think New York is better than than our home. It is good in some way, but again, I think every place has its pros and cons. So for me, and I start to figure is that if there's like one place I want to live, or there's like one place, it could be a region, it could be a country that I want to work. I would say that China is probably the best fit for me. It's not the fit for everyone else, but it was the best fit for me.
Mm-hmm. I see. I see. It seems like you always knew what's your priority. And I think that's
Well, actually, I don't actually feel like I gave up a lot of things. I'm not sure whether you know this, but I was actually I was premature, so I was born like 3 months earlier than you know this, right?
yeah.
So usually like moms carry for 10 months, but my mom only carried me for 6.5. And by the medical standard, and I was not able to survive at all. For me, as especially for my parents, all they want is for me to just live happily, to live. So they actually never asked me to do anything. So in a sense, I don't feel like there's nothing for me to lose anymore.
Wow.
I'm grateful
Okay.
enough to have my life already.
Yeah. I mean, yeah, I heard that you're always sick growing up. You know, you told me about that story. That makes a lot of sense, but I didn't know that the psychology behind your
Mm-hmm.
parents behind that story.
Mm-hmm.
I think it's a beautiful thing for parents to encourage their kids just to be, and it's so lacking, right, in the modern Chinese parenting culture.
True.
And you mentioned in your self introduction, you said that when you're not working with clients, you spend most of your time in remote mountains observing life patterns that
Right.
exist beyond urban boundaries, and up to half of your year spent on the road, turning your experience of different cultures and communities into actionable insights. So, like hiking, cycling, backpacking, traveling,
Mm-hmm.
studying, and you almost died twice, yet you
Right.
survived. So, can you tell us about that? I guess like the story of like how you almost died twice and then survived.
Yeah. When was that? Well, to start with, I love mountains. I love the nature.
Yeah.
I'm not saying that I hate people, but if there's a choice to make, I prefer the nature. You know this. I'm being talkative because it's you. I know you enough. But if it's a stranger, I don't really want to talk to him or her at all.
Yeah.
So I
You sure you don't
really,
want to live in Japan?
all right, yeah, I know. But again, yeah, yeah, I enjoy the nature a lot. So I love just climbing the mountains, hiking, cycling, what you just said. So I think it was my fourth year, like my last year of university. I was done with my credits. So basically, it allowed me to backpack around Southeast Asia. I remember it was probably one time in Cambodia.
Yeah.
Where I was trying to climb a very dangerous mountain. So there was a waterfall. So I was trying to cross over the waterfall. I got slippery. So I basically fell from the top to
Hmm.
the but fortunately, there was a pond at the very bottom part of the waterfall, so that I didn't die. But I was like, I think I fainted for I don't know 2 or 3 hours. So
Nobody was there to rescue
yeah,
you.
no, nobody was there at all.
Oh wow, that is
Yeah.
really dangerous.
Yeah, it was, but it was not my intention at all. I just was being, I don't know, I was just being probably too young
Yeah.
to
Yeah.
realize how dangerous it was.
Yeah. I mean, that's insane. So, like, how did these experiences change your perspective as well? Or you're just like, whatever, move on. Life is yours.
Well, yeah, I mean, speaking of the premature story, I think I was always told by my parents that you should do something that you like.
Yeah.
But I think I didn't realize it, or I didn't realize it from the bottom of my heart until these two experiences
Mm,
that I really have to do something I like for my right. So I mean that's why when I had the idea of sustainability consulting, when I had the idea of startup, I didn't hesitate at all. I was like,
mm.
it is actually the name of my Gmail. It's called like live like I'm dying.
Right, right,
Live like I'm dying at
right.
gmail.com. Right.
What,
So it's like my motto now.
right. Was it because like I guess what's the emotion associated with it? Did it make you realize that you could die anytime, so you don't
Yeah,
have.
I could die anytime. Life is so short. I mean, I don't have time for crappy stuff.
Yeah, yeah, and what's because I think everybody probably reached their own conclusion when
Right.
they've gone through this experience. So, what's your conclusion other than I need to do something I like to do? Like, what is the like line of thought behind that conclusion?
All right. I think I'm really bad at explaining. Let me think. How can I put this correctly? I'll use one example then. Think it was actually during my time of my first job as well. I remember that I had the opportunity to interview some of the Forbes 500 VPs. Like
Hmm.
for example, I remember I got a chance to interview one VP from Danone Asia, and I think it was like around 3 to 4 months. I got a chance to interview at least 50 or 60 of them.
Yeah.
And I kind of drew a similar conclusion because those people, from the perspective of the young me, and I reckon that they were super successful.
Mm.
And they earn lots of money every year and they have very high social status.
Yeah.
And when I was talking to them, apart from the interview part, I became very close friends with them as well. And I think 99% of them they hate their job, they hate their
Mm.
life. And I actually asked them why, and they were like use this sentence, which is really interesting. They were like, when I'm successful, I want to do this, that, and that. And I was like, what do you mean by when you are successful? You are already successful. right? Why do you wait? But then they're already at their 40s, 50s, or 60s. I was like, if by that you don't think you are successful enough, and even by those kind of scenario, you still don't feel like you can do something you like or something you dreamed when you are young, it means that if I wait until my 40th or until my 50th, maybe I'm not satisfied, right? So
Yeah.
it could like the same thing could happen to me as well. So everything together, like I said, I think it's never one moment. It's every pieces together making me start to think what I want to do in my life.
Not just success and status. The same with money is like, if you think about like thousands of years ago, or like actually millions of years ago, human as like animals, we didn't have money, we didn't have status. We might have had status in a tribal level,
Hmm.
but it was not like this sophisticated status system that we have currently. And I think that like a lot of people, and it's really kind of an external solution to an internal problem that we have as human, and how our ego has developed, right? So it's a tool to like prop up your ego. And
Hmm.
I think that when people have a fragile ego, or something that they feel lacking internally, they try to solve that with all these tools that's available society and is acceptable, right? That in the meantime, that you by definition you can't solve internal problem with external tools. So it's in a way I felt like it's almost like a lazy thinking, because you kind of outsource your own thinking process to the social system. But also in the meantime, I do have empathy for everyone, just because like that's what we're taught, right? You don't know how to think for yourself until you're faced with your own mortality, like what happened to you. And
Hmm.
usually in these kind of moments, when people started to think about things that's more sustainable to themselves, instead
Right,
of
right.
putting up like a lipstick on a pig. So that's interesting. I kind of now understand like the backstory of why did you decided to go through that such an unconventional path at the time. I just thought that maybe you just had some like unique thought yourself, but clearly there's a lot of moments accumulating to that
True.
final moment. So in a culture, also another thing about you I think is interesting to bring up is in the Chinese culture, where owning a house, a car, and even having roots in one place is often seen as an ultimate sign of stability or success, right?
Right.
But you've chosen a very different path, which is no fixed home. I know that don't live in one single place for a long time. You
Right.
are
I'm like a
always
digital nomad.
you're like a digital nomad, always on the move. You have no car, right? What freed you from that need for ownership and permanence? And what do you think people misunderstand about that choice?
Well, for me, it was basically, again, I felt like there was no choice for me. Well, supposedly I have to live in Hangzhou, right? It's where the office is at now, but we
Yeah.
have like 20 people in Hangzhou and another 20 in Shanghai. I have to travel in between. Again, with the nature of the job of the consulting, I do have to go to different places and even overseas as well. So I think it was probably like, it started from, I don't know, 5 or 6 years ago when I realized that I could only stay 3 or 4 nights in Hangzhou every month.
Mm-hmm.
And so I was like, why should I still live in my own apartment? Well, I do have my own
Right.
apartment in Hangzhou, and then I let it out for rent already. Maybe I should just use the rent money for my hotels,
Mm.
right? Then my hometown is 1.5 hour away from Hangzhou. So if it's weekends, it gives me perfect excuse to go and see my parents. Right. I think that's how it got started. Then I realized, hey, I'm not hating it. I don't know why I'm not hating it. I can sleep on all kinds of pillows, all kinds of beds. I'm not picky on the bedding stuff at all. But again, I'm not saying I like it. I just like fits the work I do now.
Yeah, but don't you think it's so nice to have a place where you can actually go to and have all your stuff there, and then you feel
Well,
like it's your sanctuary?
not really. Well, first of all, I don't have that much of stuff. I have one luggage and that's it. I carry that suitcase with me all the time, and yeah, that's all I need. Well, like I said, I love the nature because every time when let's say I'm on business trip, I go to some like new cities or some new region, I could always spend the weekend there and to see the nature. I think that's what keeps me doing this.
So okay, so let me just put it blatantly, obviously you guys are doing well, and a lot of people, right, when they're doing something like, a consulting or professional services,
Mhm.
etc., they do that for two things: status and money.
Mhm.
Mostly status, but like, yeah, money. And you're like living the opposite way, right? It doesn't seem like material possession is important to you. It doesn't seem like only a fancy car or a fancy house is important to you. So you're just doing it because you like it.
Yeah.
That is very different from a lot of people's definition of success. Or like when they're looking outward in, they would think that you are that person, but you're actually this person.
Right. Well, I
So
do think like
yeah,
people do have different choices and different definition of success, of course. Excuse me. You just mentioned that. One of the examples I always use is that, let's say if you love playing basketball, right? So there are so many different options ahead of you. You could have your own job, then you can play basketball on weekends for your leisure time, or
yeah,
you can join NBA, or you can actually own a you can own a basketball club, or you could invest in a basketball club.
yeah,
So if we are talking about the definition of success, I would say that most people in the society would think that the last choice would probably be the most successful, because if you own and invest in the
yeah,
basketball club, you have the most money, right?
yeah,
But for me, I think I'm the kind of person who just enjoys playing basketball, and that's it. I'm not saying that I don't care how much money I earn. I still care, of course. I have to live. But again, if I'm making a comparison, because I know that you can't have it all, right?
yeah,
You can't have everything with you. So for me, I always agree that money, there are certain type of things that money can't really buy. For
yeah.
example, happiness, for example, aspiration, vision, mission. So I think that's something that keeps me going for most of the time. In this sense, I'm the person who loves playing basketball. So I
Mm-hmm.
love what I do. If meanwhile I could also make some money, why not?
Mm-hmm. I see. So let's just say tomorrow you don't make as like let's just say that you make like 80% less money. Would you still be
Right.
keeping doing this, or would you pivot?
Very honestly speaking, I think I would hesitate.
Yeah.
I wouldn't think I would pivot. Probably not. I will hesitate, and then I will start to ask myself, or you just use my consulting skills to see what goes wrong,
Right.
right?
Right.
But
Right. Right.
again, I mean, I would still probably keep doing what I do, but there are like different means of doing it, right?
Right, right. Yeah, because it probably signals to you that, whatever you're offering isn't valued by the receiving end. So that is almost like a sign to be like, then what went wrong, instead of like, oh, I'm not making as much money, and
Mhm.
let's look at other opportunities to make money. Right.
Well, money is always just one factor, because in reality, there are just so many factors.
Yeah. Yeah, yeah, for sure. So what
Like
do you think?
for
Yeah.
example, if I make lots of money, I'm still doing what I'm doing at this moment, but my work is not appreciated or is
Yeah.
not acknowledged by my clients, I would probably start doubting myself as well.
Right, right. So what is the most important thing of all different factors? That is like the one thing that drives you forward.
I think it's probably the process and the result of doing sustainability consulting.
Mm-hmm.
Like every time, how can I put it? I think every time when I'm trying to talk to the clients or I'm doing field research in those rural areas, I feel like I am able to make some kind of change.
Mm.
Those are the moments that kind of keep inspiring me the most.
It's to understand that you, by doing what you're doing and in a tangible way, because you're boots on the ground, that you are in the midst of shaping a change that you want to see. So you have both you're both putting the effort, you're also having the control of it.
Right. And honestly speaking, I feel like I have really mixed feelings about saying these things, because I really don't want to use the big words. It sounds
Hmm.
really vague, and it
Yeah.
sounds really fake as well. But for me, again, the example of loving playing basketball, I think it's really hard sometimes it's just really hard to answer why. Like if you love basketball as a kid, you just love it. It's
Yeah.
probably in your DNA. Like for me, sometimes it's like this. I feel like it's in my DNA. I don't even know why I like it.
Yeah, yeah. I think it's because you also it's probably because you also started to follow your heart in a younger age. So I think this is my own observation is that for people who have not done that, and they've been programmed to do something to make a living or something external, right, whatever other people tell them to do, and there is a period of time where they were disconnected from
Hmm.
what they genuinely want and love, like their heart.
Hmm.
It's harder to go back to trust what is right because they're not used to feel that way. Like you said, it's maybe in your DNA that you just love it, but to these people, they don't know how to connect to that DNA. They don't know what DNA that is, right? Like they sometimes, for example, say if you're an attorney that you're really, really good at, reading contracts, like putting
Hmm.
agreements together. You might think that like just because after like years of practice, you become really good at your job and then you started to grow to like it. But maybe there's something else that you naturally like more, right? Or there's
Right.
something else where it lights you up more, it gives you more excitement. And it's really hard to see it just because you haven't done it for so long. You don't even know how to connect to yourself.
Hmm.
So that's a challenge I'm seeing for people who don't do that from a younger age.
Yeah, again, I think for that I still have to thank my parents because in a sense my parents never had any harsh expectations of me. They probably thought it was already quite remarkable that I was even alive,
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
given that the medical conditions back then were really equipped to support the survival of a premature baby like me. So, yeah, you mentioned this as well. Like, I think from my earliest memories, I seem to have spent most of my time in hospital,
That's
constantly
what I
coming
heard.
with colds and fever. I think it wasn't until I was about 6 or 7 that my health started to improve a bit.
Yeah, yeah.
So yeah, I'm really grateful. I think that they've given me enough freedom to do what I like.
Yeah, yeah. And also, maybe that's like a parenting hack is to not have very high expectation for your kids and then maybe your kids will turn out to be more successful and happier.
Yeah, I know. I remember. I think my mom told me once that like maybe she doesn't really understand the term consulting either in English or in Chinese. I think it was probably like 2 years ago when she said to me, "Hey, son, I think you are like you are born to be a consultant." I was like, "Why?" Like they thought I was quite rebellious when I was a
Yeah,
kid. I love asking lots of questions, especially why. I
yeah.
remember, for instance, when my parents want me to learn an instrument. I think that happened to all the Asian kids. I asked them, why should I learn it? Is it just to perform in front of the relatives? So at first, they probably thought they
It's a
could.
very deep question for a kid.
Yeah, right? Why? Why? So at first, they probably just thought they could fought me off with things like it cultivates your temperament.
Yeah,
And
yeah,
I
yeah.
continue to
Bullshit.
ask, like, do you really think learning something I'm not interested can cultivate my temperament? And perhaps that's why I'm doing consulting now. I've always been found up asking questions. And they couldn't ask me questions. And they told,
Right, right, right. And it seems like you're always in and out of hospitals because of health reasons when you
right.
were a little baby. Now thinking back, how did that make you feel? And also how did that determine how you feel and think later on?
Well, because that was before 5 or something, I don't really have much memory of it. So looking back, I was like, I'm just feeling grateful, and that's it. Really change when I was born. But again, I was lucky enough to be alive. And you probably know this. I think I told you this. My birthday was actually the same day with my mother's birthday. So that's why I have the Chinese character Xin in my name, which translates to English fortunate. So like it's probably just my dad's feeling fortunate enough because he only has to prepare one birthday every year.
You almost just didn't make it, right? And
Right.
they felt very grateful. I do think that gratitude and positivity, like it's such a generative force, right? And
Mhm.
a lot of the more you're grateful for things, the more positivity is gonna bring. And a lot of people don't understand it. They think that like if I'm thankful of these things, that means that like if I'm not greedy enough, I'm not hungry enough, then can I have more, right? Like I settle or something. But I think it's quite the opposite. Once you actually allow yourself that opportunity to be grateful about everything, and you see life through a lens of like everything is a blessing, and even if I don't see it now, maybe I'll see it tomorrow. Then you don't carry all these resentment with you, right? Like when you're moving forward, you trust the process more, and you tend to look at like the lessons that everything will bring to you more, and you actually, as a result of it, learn more and apply the lessons to your life more. What is something about your journey that looked impressive from the outside but felt very hard or lonely when you were going through it?
Wow, I can't actually think of any. I don't really feel lonely actually. I love being alone.
Mm-hmm.
And for most of the time, I choose to be alone. So, well, I guess, yeah, I never felt lonely in my lifetime.
That's crazy. Okay, so I also just have a question based on what I've known about you. Like,
Mhm.
first of all, like starting a sustainability consulting firm in the early 2010s in China,
Right.
where nobody knew what that was, and you needed to knock at a lot of people's doors for them to
Mm.
give you a chance. That's really hard, right? It's not hard.
It was hard, but it was also my expectation, I would say.
Okay.
I had my expectation of it.
Okay. Okay. So you were expecting it to be hard, but so as a result of that, you didn't feel like anything inside because
I didn't
sometimes like
feel as
yeah.
hard.
Okay. Okay.
Like it was hard. I didn't feel like I think the reality was not harder than my expectation. So when I made the decision of having my own startup, having my own small boutique firm, I was like, it's also my first startup. I've never done this before. I was only at my like 25. I was like, there are definitely so many difficulties ahead, so many obstacles ahead. So I actually made a list of what type of difficulties that I might encounter. Uh, Right. So, for example, basically what you said is a concept that no one would understand to start with. And not only the concept of sustainability, but also the concept of consulting.
Yeah.
Right. It's especially for the private SMEs, for the multinational companies, it's probably a already known concept. It's all
Yeah.
right. But again, for the local companies, it's really hard. I remember every time when they heard me saying sustainability or CSR or ESG, their first reaction would be like, "Hey, do you just want me to donate some money,
That makes
or
sense.
yeah, or like, are you just trying to write a compliance report about my company?" So basically, I would say 99% of potential clients that I encountered, they didn't really get what we were doing at the very beginning. It was hard. I got it, but
Yeah, it's so what drove you forward, right? Because it was so hard, but then you didn't give up, you just kept going. So what drove you forward? And did you also have a contingency plan where I was like, okay, I'm gonna give up, like, if XYZ happens?
oh, wow, damn, you really ask very good questions. Those are the questions I never think about before.
This is my job to do this. That's
Ah,
why.
yeah,
Yeah.
um, yeah, kudos to that. Yeah, like I said, I actually never thought about that. For me, it was just something I loved doing, and it's probably because, well, thanks to anthropology, I have always had my expectations ready. You can't have it all. So for me, I was like, you have to experience 9 failures
Yeah.
to gain one success.
Well,
So if you knock on the doors 9 times and then you fail, it basically means you're gonna succeed next time.
the next time. Yeah.
So you can't feel bad about yourself at the first 9 times
Yeah.
because that's a process.
But it's really hard to not feel bad about yourself the first 9 rejections.
No, but again, I think it's the same as when, like, say, when we were kids and when we were students. We can't always get the scores we wanted, right? We had to study first.
Yeah, that's true.
And we had to study even outside of school at our homes and etc. We do have to spend extra efforts. We have to go on extra miles. But for me, so it was similar. I was never expecting some kind of success would just wait there and knock on my door. It's never gonna happen.
It's
So
entitlement. It's basically saying
right,
that expecting to get 100 out of 100 of a score without studying.
right. So what's the term again? Like the failure is the mother of success. I think. So basically for me, I was like, I never thought it was that hard. Was basically because I kind of picture all the failure in the process already.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that's such an amazing lesson though, because especially I think for I don't know what people's expectations are these days. Social media and internet, make success look very easy, right, to everyone, and it just seems like, oh, if you're not getting it overnight, you're not getting it right the first time, then you're a failure. And it's so much harder to be humble and be like, what is realistic, and having that talk with yourself, and not only just that, like what is realistic, but can I actually do it, right? Can I do what's required to do? And also just to kind of have that intrinsic motivation, just because I think a lot of people having anxiety think that they're failures because they are rewarded. Their brain is wired to receive external rewards, right? Instead of like, do I enjoy the process? Or like, am I being a person that I want to be? All these things that perhaps doesn't look like success from external, but is very essential for you to achieve that lasting external success.
Well, that's true. I always agree that no one can just define success for you. You have to define your own success.
Yeah. Again, I think it's like a bypass, right? Like a easier way to think. And it's because whatever is defined by society is safer, it's easier. It doesn't require a lot of like deep thoughts. And I think that this is just my personal opinion. I think that, again, a lot of people never seriously sit down and emotionally feel the weight of death that, like the amount of time that we have on this planet of Earth. And if you don't do that, then you always think that you have more time and you take life for granted. And as a result of that, you default these things to after you being up, like whatever you're talking about these VPs of these big companies. That's essentially what they're doing. So I know that done sustainability work with some of the major companies, and I was laughing like when you were saying that, oh, they thought that this is like donating money. Like I know it sounds super weird for Westerners, Western companies, and even now anyone at that time, I understand because they're so profit driven, right? And then so these kind of work just sounds to them like, first of all, it's like not worth my time, not worth my energy, but also just like complete not worth my money. So what do you wish people outside of China better understood about what's actually happening on the ground?
Wow. I think first of all, although sustainability is a what we call a foreign word or foreign term, the nature of sustainability is actually together with the very ancient wisdom of Chinese language. We don't really have the direct translation of sustainability. We do have a word for that. But if you say that word in Chinese, people will just think you are such a weird person. I say, hey, like Crystal, I meet you on the street. I would say, hey, let's talk about sustainability. And you probably just roll your eyes, right?
Yeah, like sounds like a scam. Sounds like a scam call. I don't know.
Yeah,
Get me
I
out of
know.
here.
But again, but for me, I think, and especially I think for the Chinese context, we usually actually break this concept down into more detailed concepts, such as what I said, like education, poverty, rural development, etc.
Yeah.
Climate change, biodiversity, there are like more detailed words. Even for biodiversity, we could always go down to more detailed species and etc. So for our work, we help companies to realize what are the topics that are stopping them from making money. It's very important. People and companies don't usually realize that. I'll give you a very simple example. Let's say if you are a head of a shipping company, you do international shipping. So you probably don't really think that climate change, such a big word, is related to your business. But again, it is because when the average temperature goes up, and it is going up every year from now on,
Yeah.
from 10 years ago, the chances of your ships, the chances of confronting those extreme weathers would definitely go up. And you should either change your shipping route, or you have to kind of calculate when it's gonna happen and how you can avoid that. Because if it takes an extra 10 days to go to the destination, it's gonna cost you a lot $1 million. So that's something that's actually stopping your business from earning more money. And that's the topics that I can bring. That is for one. And I'll give you another example, which is really interesting. It's from a recent work we did. I'm not going to say the name of the brand. It's what we call women's footwear. So you are a lady, like you wear lots of shoes, right? So I think it was from last year we did several rounds of interviews in the States. It's actually a Chinese company. It's a Chinese factory who makes ladies footwear. And then it was very interesting. So I was in New York. I remember I kind of interviewed two, like from I don't know, like 20 to 30 ladies is in New York, and everyone was complaining about their shoes. So basically from what I learned, well, I'm a guy, I never know this. Ladies in New York, they have to wear two pairs of shoes every day.
It is
So
tough.
sneakers to
Yes.
work, then change to high heels, right?
Yeah.
And
Yeah. Yeah.
then why is that? High heels are not comfortable at all. I was so surprised by that because men would never buy uncomfortable shoes. If any men's shoes are uncomfortable, I don't think that brand would survive anymore. But again, in the States that the more uncomfortable it gets, the more stylish it is, the more fashionable it is.
Well, okay, so I think it's not just a American thing, it's just
Yeah,
like
it's
a woman thing. And the problem for New York is that there's, like all the subway systems and like the road condition is sometimes
right.
not the best, and you can't wear your high heels walking on those roads. And especially like it's so crowded, right? And then like
Right.
people walk very fast and you can't walk very fast on those shoes. And I think that this is actually, Sarah Blakely's, sneaks. I don't know whether you guys look into it. That combine sneakers with high heels, and I think that's probably where that idea came from as well.
Yeah, exactly. So I remember there's like one lady, our interviewee actually said this, right? So if human beings are capable of making phones and computers, why is it so hard for human beings to make a pair of comfortable high heels? It shouldn't be, right?
Yeah.
So by the end, my client, they actually make very comfortable high heels, and 100% of the materials are made from plastic bottles. It's 100% sustainable as well by the name of circular economy. They sold billions of dollars last year in the States.
Wow.
So
Like, I felt
they,
like at this point you might as well just disclose the name,
nah, it's all right, it's all
It's
right.
like a good promotion for them.
Yeah, it's all right. The brand is called Vivaya. So
Wow.
look it up. And but anyway, so why I'm bringing this case up is really like sustainability for me is about real problems.
Yeah.
It's not about the big terms. Like there are so many people talking about say gender equality, but again, as a guy, I never felt that women's are wearing uncomfortable shoes. But once I know that, I feel like, hey, there might be a solution to that.
Yeah.
So for our work, there are so many social problems we see every day, and we see business opportunities from those.
Yeah, yeah, I think it's really good. It make them realize how it's actually affecting their business, and it's not just
Right.
some fluffy words that everybody talks about, but it can help them or damage their bottom line, so that they because like again, like I think for all business, but especially for Chinese business, is a lot about profitability. So the good thing and bad thing, well, the good thing is that if you then link a concept to that, then they will definitely pay attention to it.
Right. Exactly.
Yeah. So can you walk us through one project in China that really surprised you? Either how progressive it was or how deeply challenging it became, or anything that you're proud of, maybe just like one project so that people can understand what do you do there, and also like what kind of impacting, we're making there.
I'll give you one. I've been working with this company for 5 years already. It's actually a gaming company. So they produce mobile games. So if we take the concept of the traditional CSR, which is corporate social responsibility, most parents in China would always regard game as such a bad thing, right? But when I was a kid, I was so addicted to games, but I never thought game was a bad thing
Like all Asian guys
because
are.
yeah, I mean, like for me, I was like, maybe one day I could be addicted to books, to studying as well, right? Like the game itself, it's not bad. The gamification of it, basically, it's a combination of interaction, of giving you feedbacks that you can't really get in your real life. So, again, let's take the example of a gaming company. If we take the mindset of corporate social responsibility, you probably would start a project of helping the kids to be less addictive to the
Yeah.
games,
Yeah.
right? But it has nothing to do with the profit of the gaming company. It probably even endanger the profit of the gaming company if there's less kids playing it.
Also, like, how do you even make somebody to be more like less addicted to gaming? It's like saying, oh,
Right.
like I wanted to have something that makes people less addicted to marijuana. I mean, like
Yeah,
it's
exactly.
you can't stop people from doing stuff they want to do, right? That's just not
Right.
possible. Yeah.
Yeah, so I think from the very starting point of the project, we start to think if we could take the gamification part out of games and we can think like what kind of social impact can gamification make? It's really interesting that we started to have one project together with Fudan University and Tongji University in Shanghai. We started a medical trial, which is really interesting, what we call digital therapy. So I'm gonna skip all the progress. So as a result, we have a small application that you can find on your phone or on your iPad. So it basically helped elderly to diagnose whether they've got the early symptoms of Alzheimer's.
Mhm.
So the situation now in China is that the elderly they hate to admit that they've got the early symptoms of Alzheimer.
Yeah.
They don't really want to admit that they are sick, right?
Yeah, of course.
And
It's a matter of
really
pride.
also really very hard for for their kids to take their parents to the hospital and to have everything checked. So by seeing that, we just made we made a, I wouldn't say it's a game, it's a gamified application where the parents, where the elderly, they could just download and play without knowing it's a diagnosis. So they could just play for a while and the diagnosis could be done automatically to see whether he or she has early symptoms of Alzheimer. So, which is really interesting. It's also becoming the second, what we call, it's consulting language, what we call second growth curve of the gaming. So it's not only a gaming company anymore. It has its sub company, a medical company as well. We've gained the very first digital therapy license in China. Now we have three products of that. They are solving social issues. Meanwhile, they are also making profits out of those social issues.
Yeah, so I think that's an interesting concept
Mhm.
or it's a very fundamental concept where like the thing isn't in the means, right? The thing is in
Right.
how the means is being used to drive what results. So if you look at marijuana, you can also have medical marijuana, then
Exactly.
it would treat certain conditions, but if you abuse it, right, it becomes a sin. So it's the same with gaming. Like it's just a way to make people do things. So if you think about it, and it can be a force for good or it can be a force for evil. It really depends on how you want to use it. But it's not right to blame it, right? Just because like the result that it drove.
Yeah.
So, okay, so one last question I have. What kind of legacy do you hope to leave behind? Not just in terms of work, but also in the way that you wanted to make other people feel.
But can you give me one example? I don't really know where to think.
Okay, well, I don't know about the legacy you want to leave. So first of all,
Okay.
it's your legacy,
How
right?
about you?
I mean, okay, so I think that's very for me it's very simple because it is actually about like that is complete align with the
Mm.
line of work I want to do. And the reason why I want to start Asian Art Club, I said that in my first episode was because it's something that I wish that we grew up with, right? And I remember growing up reading books, and these are books from the US, and it's highlighting different characters girls can have. So there's chapters about courage, there's chapters about honesty, there's chapters about confidence, and they have a very small, story about each one of them. And basically, that story will highlight that character. And I
Mhm.
used to read it and I was like, wow, this is so beautiful. So I remember there's like this one story where this girl, she was in a restaurant, she was treated very unfairly because
Mhm.
I probably because her race or her socioeconomic background. And they eventually she actually give the waiter like $100. I think that she ordered a lot less food than that, and she said that like look, like I can't afford all these food, I'll give you more, and it's because I'm worth to be respected, right? It's not, you shouldn't judge me based on how I look. Or and I think that all these give me a lot of, as a kid I was thinking like, wow, you can live a life like that. You don't need to live a life in autopilot. You can live a life
Right.
based on your own chosen values and how you wanted to highlight that to the outside world. And for me, starting something like this is really about make people be aware of the life they're currently living and what they can be potentially, and from the examples of other people. So I think the way I want to make other people feel is like a lot of a lot of encouragement and a lot of validation, but also in the meantime, a lot of permission to perhaps answering to the whisper in their mind that they always have and be like, can I do this? Can I not? To kind of give that small voice a chance, right? For that to come to life so that they can be the version of themselves that they always wanted to be. So that is my legacy I will hope to
I
achieve.
see, I see. Well, what I suppose for me is about trying to analyze yourself and talk to yourself and know what you've given up for what. My experience about not just in Japan, but also like in the UK, America, including my travels to Africa and Southeast Asia, I think those experiences made me proudly aware that what I want to pursue is probably a little bit different from what others want, or especially what my parents want.
They will not even understand, right? They're like, what the heck
Right?
are you doing?
Yeah, exactly. Like, there are like always other people want different stuff, but they're not you. For example, like parents always want you to be safe. My parents want me to become a civil servant like them, and
Yeah.
certainly not to start my own business. They want me to get married and have kids sooner or later, right? So,
Of course.
I
It's,
don't know
it's
how to
like it's
call it.
like
It's like,
it's like you can do
yeah.
all these amazing things, but they still want you to get married. And if you're not married, you're still a failure.
Right. Yeah, I mean, there's like one important distinction. It seems that a lot of people can't really grasp that you can't have everything. You can't have it all.
You just can't.
Parents want you to live close to home, have a stable job, lead a happy life, and spend lots of time with them. Is that possible? It's not impossible, but it's bloody difficult,
Hmm.
right? So it's the same with my life, my happiness, my pursuits, my incomes, my dreams. As a ordinary person like myself, I think it's really challenging to have it all. But again, I think I've tried to analyze myself to understand what I have given up and why. And by the end of the day, I don't really feel like I have to communicate this with others.
Yeah.
All I have to communicate is to myself.
To yourself, yeah. But that was also a result of deep individuation, and it's basically you don't care about what other people think or feel about your decisions anymore, and you are okay and you're comfortable with making decisions for yourself from your own judgment. And I think that
Right,
that's
exactly. Because when you actually sent me the invitation, I thought about this. It's called Asian Rebel Club. So perhaps I think my rebellion since childhood has been this. It matters like both big and small things. I've always insisted on expressing this, not to myself, but also to my parents, to the friends around me. I don't need your opinions. I
yeah.
can make my own decisions and I can take responsibility for the decisions I make.
Yeah, yeah. No, that's beautiful. I think that it took me many, many years to learn this myself. And I think that for I don't know if it's a gender thing. I do feel like it's a little bit harder for girls in general because we are social beings and having other people's approval, being a part of the social group and you're the same as others, so we're like in this together. Is very important for women, and that's kind of like how we were programmed. And as a result of it, it's harder to break out of, this mode of like go with the flow because at some point you need to realize that like, if you're not happy, first of all, you don't need to be unhappy, right? And then you also need to be sensitive enough to know that you're unhappy. And then you need to be sensible enough to be like, okay, this is the reason why I'm unhappy. Then you gotta have courage, right? You gotta be courageous enough to be like, okay, let's just do X, Y, Z so that I'm, out of this unhappiness mode. And then analyze, as you said, like yourself, and be like, so going forward, what are the conscious choices I can make to make sure that I'll never be this unhappy again, right? Or like prevent it from
Right.
happening. And all these things are really hard conversations that you need to have, and then with yourself, but also in the meantime, once you started to have conversation with other people, like especially parents who you think that you're close with, who you think that they may have your back, and they oftentimes do, but they're not very well informed, right? Like they're not like they maybe not like not as in touch with themselves and also in touch with what you want and what your need is as an individual. They can't give you these advice. So like if you do like seek out advice from them, wanted to know their opinions, sometimes you derail that process. So I think it's great that you're actually doing that from a young age. I don't know what gave you that wisdom, but that was something I need to learn and unlearn for a long time.
I remember I have one particularly very profound conversation with my parents. It was during my second year of senior high school when we were discussing whether I should study abroad because I wanted to go to Japan for anthropology, right? I remember saying something quite serious to my parents. I said, if you allow me to go abroad, it might mean that we'll gradually drift apart in the future because our values and our life trajectories will likely become completely different.
Well, that is
It
a
wasn't
very
like
what? Oh,
I actually said this.
said
Like,
it?
it wasn't that I wanted this to happen,
Yeah.
but objectively speaking, it was quite possible, right?
Yeah.
So,
But it's
yeah,
also,
sadly,
I mean, but also in the meantime, like, how could you even know that from such a young age? I only noticed it in my late 20s when it happened. And I was like, wow, we are very different people.
I don't know, but I think as a result, sadly, that's exactly what happened. Despite the fact that I'm now in China, in Hangzhou, only 1 hour away from home,
Yeah.
I find it quite difficult to have meaningful conversation with them about family, marriage, or children. I can't understand them. They can't understand me. That's exactly what happened.
Yeah. That is, I mean, but how did they receive it? Do you think that they understood it, or do you think that they thought
I
that
don't
they
know,
understood
probably
it?
like 20%.
Yeah.
They spend the next 10 years trying to understand it.
You know, like I think that going back to what you said about you can't have it all, like it is a really sad process to like, you know, for certain things that you can't have. It's a really sad process to go through that grieving process, right? Because like, you
Right.
know, like even this example you said that like you don't want to do it, you don't want to drift apart from your parents. And in fact that you still go to see them quite often, but it's not about the physical distance at some point. It's not about
Right,
the
it's not.
physical distance anymore. It's about the mental distance. And that is even, you know, like even more lonely, right? And because you
Mhm,
like it is a price you're gonna pay for the amount of growth that you want to
mhm.
have as a human being. You inevitably leave people who don't grow in the same way behind.
Exactly.
Sometimes it's not even about whether we wanted to have everything. It's about that the fact that your life trajectory just determines that you can't because of all these natural gaps that will inevitably happen, right? So for example, like if you realize that okay, like money isn't as important as the costs that I'm pursuing, then naturally you're going to not want to pursue money and it's going to drain you if you abandon your costs and you pursue money. Like it's not about like, oh, am I choosing this? You know, or like, oh, like can I have it all? It's about like you just can't when you start to make your first decision, right? Because there is a direction for that to go. So okay, so I asked this question from all my guests here. Finish the sentence. I'm proud of myself because.
I'm proud of myself because I'm happy.
Okay. Okay, that's very simple, but that's very hard to achieve. So you should be proud of yourself for sure.
Well, thank you.
If this conversation sparked something in you, share it with someone who needs to hear it. And if you are building a more true life, not just more impressive, we would love to hear your story. Follow us on Instagram, YouTube, and TikTok at Asian Rebel Club and join our newsletter for more ways to connect. Link in the description. Until next time.